My name is Boo. Before we go through the meal pack project recipe today, so I'm going to introduce myself, a bit of my background and where I came from and things like that. So I've been cooking for the last 13 years and I've worked in Intercontinental Hotel, Grand Chancellor, Rockport Hotels, and Hyatt Regency, and then many more small restaurants and fine dining restaurants and stuff like that. And right now I'm working as a chef's trainer in Adelaide Institution of Hospitality School in Perry Street. To begin with, we are going to show you how to make a minestrone soup. So what we are going to do, to begin with, I'm going to explain about the ingredients. So we do have, according to this recipe, we do have a pasta, which is basically a shell pasta, so a little pasta. But in terms of pasta, you can use any type of pasta. Pasta is the carbohydrate, basically component of the soup, and it's also release the starch into the soup and thickens up the soup. And then we also have onions, and we also have a carrot, and then we got a stock cube, and we do have a dry mixed herb. So in terms of herb, you can also substitute with the fresh herb. Normally, you can use parsley. Parsley is very common with this type of soup, but if you like any other herb, is fine. It depends on what you like. And then we also got tin tomato. Instead of using tin tomato, you can use fresh tomato. We got mixed bean. We also got green pea. So to begin with, when you make soup or anything, first things, organization skill is very important. When you organize something, meaning you need to learn how to multitasking, rather than doing one things at a time, so two or three things going together. So which means we are going to start heating up the water for the pasta. So pasta need to be cooked, which means put your water on the stove top, let it go. And at the same time, now what we are going to do, we are going to show you how to prepare the onions. Onion need to be peeled. Obviously, I already peeled it, but you need to peel it. Once you peel the onion, what we are going to do, we can cut the onion into half, and on the chopping board, the flat side goes on the chopping board. Then what you do, you can just slice it. Slice it, and once you slice it, to dice it, you can just put one cross like this. Once you get that, all you need to do, hold all together and dice it nicely. So if your knife skill is not really good, you don't really have to worry too much. This type of soup, you can always do a rustic style. You can just cut everything into a chunk and then put it all together. Originally, this type of soups is basically, the history behind this soup is basically, it comes as a leftover, put it together and I make this soup. And it's in a way, it's very, very good. If you got leftover vegetable and things like that at home in the fridge, if you think it's getting off, all you need to do, put all together and make this type of soup. It's economical, and all the ingredient that you use into this soup is also not expensive. Something that is a basic ingredient, something that you can always get it from everywhere, right? So, well, the water is boiling, and we can put this pasta. And with this pasta, it's very, very important to season it. When you cook this type of pasta or any type of pasta, seasoning into the water is very important. At the same time, a lot of people put oil into the pasta liquid. For me, putting oil into cooking liquid, it doesn't make any sense. Once you drain your pasta, then you can put a little bit of oil and mix it through. The oil stops the starch to sticking together. So we got the onion diced, and this is my bean. And at the same time, so what we are going to do, we organize everything in the bowl, put it back into the bowl. And the carrot, what we are going to do with the carrot, basically, if the carrot is nice and fresh and young, you don't really have to peel it. If you think carrot is dirty, you can always peel it. Peel it like this is very easy. You hold the carrot and you run it through, right? If you want to peel it like that, you can run it like this. So very easy. As you run it through, you turn the carrot in your hand. Otherwise, if you think this is not safe, you can always put on the chopping board and run it like this, right? So once your carrot is peeled, what we are going to do, we are going to dice this. Again, if your knife skill is not that good, you don't have to be scared. You know, you can always cut it into chunks. So what we do with the carrot is normally round. And when you put it on the chopping board, it's always to roll around, and then sometimes they get dangerous, right? So what you do to begin with, you cut, nice and clean cut right at the bottom. What you do, put this flat on the chopping board so that it sits on the chopping board, doesn't move. So what you do, slice it. For this type of soup, you don't really need to cut it too small, right? So what you do, once you get this, and you can cut it into baton, basically, little stick. Once you get the stick, you can put all together, hold it together. You can run your knife like this, nice and clean dice. Same thing. And otherwise, you can also cut into more sort of a chunk. You know, it's a rustic soup. You don't really have to be spending too much time to cut this, especially if you are cooking under time constraint. Carrot is generally good. You can eat it raw. You can cook it. And for the pasta, generally it takes about 6-7 minutes, right? Especially this pasta, you don't really have to cook completely. This is the first cooking stage, meaning we blanch the pasta. The second cooking stage, we're going to add the pasta into the soup. So when you cook into the soup, the pasta get cooked more. But right from the beginning, if you cook the pasta a lot, by the time you add it into the soup, what's going to happen? You're going to break the pasta. So you got pasta, you don't really have the shape of the pasta. So part of the reason why it's just a purely blanch, it normally takes about 3 or 4 minutes. So what we are going to do, I'm going to stop at this stage. If you want to, you can always pick up one pasta and check it. So this pasta is definitely ready. What I'm going to do, I switch off the heat. We are going to drain it. So the pasta is ready. So this is the dry herb. Most of the times the mixed dry herb has got parsley, oregano, and a basil. The stock cube is purely for the flavor. If you don't want to use the stock cube, you can always use the stock, the actual stock. You can use the chicken stock, you can use the beef stock, or you can use any other stock. So probably seafood stock is not really good with this type of soup. But generally, this is a vegetarian soup, with a lot of vegetables. So part of the reason why, you know, the protein component for the soup is from the bean. Bean is a secondary source of the protein, right? If you're vegetarian, part of the reason why we say tofu is good, part of the reason why we said a lot of lentil, legume family is really good for the source of the protein. So part of the reason why for this soup, we got a lot of mixed beans. So in goes my onions, right? In goes my onions. What we are going to do, we are going to saute it, meaning we are going to make it nice and soft. So cooking onion is very, very important. Some cooking required to be brown the onion. Some cooking just you need to saute it or make it a bit more sort of a shiny, translucent. The cooking it on a gentle heat is very important to produce the maximum aromatic flavor. Okay, as you see, the onion is nice and translucent, shiny. So what we are going to do, we are going to add my carrot. So mix it together, cook a little bit further. And basically, everything is instructed into the recipe. I just follow the recipe. You may see a different way of cooking. So I may do a different way of cooking. Today we are entirely concentrating about the way of cooking through this recipe. As you see, carrot and onion carrot basically release the color into the onion, and onion is become from white to slightly yellowish. So what we are going to do now, we are going to add my tomato. Once you add your tomatoes, the good way to use it, you can always rinse this tin with a little bit of water. And at the same time, for this recipe, you need a little of water. So what we are going to do, I'm going to add most of my water in there. I'm going to set a little bit of water in one of these bowls. And what do you do with this water is that basically you are going to dissolve your stock cube. So what you do, if you want to add into the water, all you need to do, use a fork or a spoon. If you want to, you can also heat up the water. Heat up the water, it dissolves the faster. And then you can just mix it through. Once you mix it through, all you need to do, add this liquid into the soup. That's all you need to do. And at the same time, so what we do is open the tin, right? So what you need to do is a good idea to drain the liquid a little bit, especially from the green peas and things like that. If you use all the liquid out of the peas and things like that, you're going to change the recipe. Recipe has got, actual recipe has, amount of the liquid that you use into the recipe is a really good consistency, correct amount of the liquid. And then you choose to use all the liquid from the pea and the beans and the things like that. Sometimes your soup turn out to be really runny and thin. Now we are going to add my dry herbs, right? Dry herbs. And a lot of people, if you want to use dry herb, you can always add a little bit earlier, reconstitution of the dry herb, meaning getting moisture into the dry herb and bring the flavor out. But if you are using fresh herbs, you can always use right at the end. It gives you better flavor, more freshness. But dry herb, you can always add earlier, right? So my stock cube is basically moistening up with the water. So what we are going to do, we can just add this in there and let the hot water dissolve it completely. So literally this type of soup takes about 15 minutes maximum to make it. It's very, very easy. Okay, it's almost boiling, right? So what we are going to do, and before I add the bean, I'm going to put my green pea into it. And with the green pea, we're also going to put the pasta into it. So as soon as I put my pasta and the green pea, you see the volumes of the soup is up. So if you think you're cooking for one person and this is too much, you can always make one recipe. This is the one recipe. You can always do this recipe and pack away. Or sometimes even it's good to pack away and give it to your family and friends as a present. Nothing wrong with that. It's the food makes everyone happy, right? And when you give away food, everyone smiles. Smile makes you happy. All right, bean goes in. All the bean goes in. Beautiful. So what we are going to do, mix it together. Now we can taste and check the seasoning. A little bit more salt. And the seasoning is generally very, very important. No matter how good you cook, if you haven't got enough seasoning, not much taste. So anyway, look at the soup. It's a nice consistency. And as I said, if you're really looking for a thicker soup, as you see this soup, the consistency of the soup is like this, slightly runny, right? If you are really looking for a thicker consistency, what you can do, you can put a lot of starchy vegetable into it. Starchy vegetable like a potato. You can also add more pasta into it. In terms of pasta, we use this little shell pasta. You can use a risotto pasta. Risotto pasta is generally really good with the soup. You can also use a spaghetti. And any pasta that you use, it basically I would say you need to break it up, especially if you use a spaghetti into it. Most likely, before you add it into it, break it. And another important thing is a lot of people, when they make this soup, they don't really cook the pasta in a separate bowl. They just put the pasta and cook with the soup. So if you cook it in a different pot, what happens is the cooking liquid drains. So meaning all the starches from the pasta goes into the drain. If you put into the soup, what happens is the starch into the pasta stayed into the soup, and that thickens up the actual soup. So that's the different way of doing it. But particularly with this recipe, we entirely go through this recipe. So it's very easy to go. It's more sort of a one-pot meal. Literally, you don't really need a lot of things. Everything cooked in a one pot, and right at the end, you got a really beautiful soup.
This has been a Cabana production.